Thank you everyone for joining us today. Another episode of Touton Live, and today we're very pleased and excited to be joined by Damien Yvon. He's the manager and winemaker of Clos Henri Vineyards, and they're located within the Marlborough region of New Zealand.
So Clos Henri is a fairly unique estate in Marlborough for many reasons. Um, the main one is certainly around the ownership of the estate. So Clos Henri is a family estate owned by the Bourgeois family, Henri Bourgeois in Sancerre, in the Loire Valley in France. So the Bourgeois family have been growing Pinot Noir and Sauvignon and Pinot Noir for over 10 generations. In their little village of Chavignol in the heart of Sancerre. Yeah. So the family has a very long relationship with these two varieties. And back in the late 80s, as a family, they wanted to take the challenge on exploring new terroir. So they've been traveling for 12 years, trying to find specific terroir for Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir. This was their only interest because this is what flows through their blood, for the last 10 generations. And it took them 12 years to find the site. And they've traveled in many new world countries. But when they came to New Zealand, they felt something different, something special. And for the people that have already travelled to New Zealand, they certainly understand what I'm talking about. It's not just about grapes, but it's about the country. First of all, very welcoming people, but also an amazing climate, freshness. Back in the 90s when the family came up here, I don't think it was the most fashionable to grow cool climate wine in the 90s. Probably it was about the big reds and so on. But coming from the Loire in France, it was all about cool climate. And certainly New Zealand was not in the radar of many people, but was certainly on their radar. And some people thought it was crazy. Why would you go 12,000 miles to start a new business? But it proved to be the right decision today. I think if you'd ask them, they certainly have no regrets. And the ultimate reason was also the right cool climate and the soil. We can talk about it a bit more afterwards, but the terroir here are absolutely stunning, and New Zealand has the ability and specifically Marlborough to not produce the best and the richest of the wine, but it's producing fine wine. Right. And for me that's absolutely key. The difference between a big and complex wine or rich wine and the difference with the ability of crafting fine wine, delicate wine. And that's really what they were after.
Yeah, so it seems, it's really an incredible decision of the family because like you said, 10 generations in Sancerre, producing amazing wines, and then all of a sudden to say, let's expand, and then to wind up on the opposite side of the world. So I know you're from France originally too, so tell me just a bit about your story. How did you, originate from France and then wind up down under yourself?
That's a bit of an interesting one. I just happened to be there at the right time. When I am myself originally, as you all figured out, I'm an import product in New Zealand. I'm originally from France, from the Loire Valley as well. But I've been living now and managing the estate for the Bourgeois family for the past 14 years. Wow. So I'm still in my first job. I'm still with my first employer, so certainly for a good reason. Nice. Certainly great people to work for. And it was just an amazing coincidence. I was finishing my study. As I was finishing my last year of uni at Bordeaux, at winemaking uni, the Bourgeois family sent me a 2-line email asking me to meet me. Yeah. And when I got into their office in Sancerre, they said, we've bought an estate in Touton in the Loire Valley. We'd like you to manage it. And I said, I'm not interested. I want to go back to overseas. And I said, oh, it's good. We haven't bought an estate in Touton actually. So there was a complete joke in the middle of an interview. And they say, we're here to talk about New Zealand. And long story short, finished my studies. 6 months later, I took the plane, went to New Zealand and never left. So, wow. So yes, 14 years. I'm about to start this morning my 15th vintage at Clos Henri. So yes, it's been an amazing journey, certainly alongside the family.
No, well, congratulations. I mean, 15 years, especially at one estate and in your first professional career role is pretty amazing. And, it's just so unique, this terroir here. So I really want to get into that. So let's speak a bit about the terroir, the challenges, why the bourgeois family chose this estate, because I know there was lots of different properties, especially 15 years ago. So what makes this estate so unique?
Well, when the family came here back in 99, 2000, they came with a very clear idea about what they wanted to do, except that it was on the land that they were yet to know, you know. And, you know, farming land is like a love relationship. You need to, you know, it's a long, it's a long journey. You've got to learn about each other.
Yeah.
But they knew what they wanted to get out of it as far as, you know, the wine style and viticulture. And when they came here, they took some pretty bold decision in the way they established the vineyard, and locally was an interesting one because people were certainly fascinated by what the Borgia family were trying to do. And then the first thing was choosing the land within the valley. The Marlborough region seems to be just one big, large region, but it's actually not that big. But it's got also a lot of pockets of different terroir, you know. And the family chosen to go quite upstream in the valley on all the soil where there were virtually no vineyard planted back then, and established on the hillside. And you show it very well, David, the hillside there.
I was just
On
going
the
to show
photo.
here real quick. This is a zoom in map of Marlborough, of the region, and it's tough to see here, but Clos Henri is actually the furthest one to the west, so the furthest one to the left side there. You have the ocean to the right, and then Clos Henri is that the furthest dot to the left there. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, that tells a lot, David, in a way that you could see straight away they went a different path. And what they were interested in is hillside and an older soil, because the more east you go on the right hand side of the map, the younger the soil. And because it's at the end of the valley, and the Borgia family always believed that if you want to make fine wine, age-worthy wines that talk about their terroir, you need to be on older soil. So that was an interesting decision compared to the rest of the valley. And then they decided to plant quite a high density when everybody was trying to go low density, make it easy, have a good crop. The family went 2.5 times the average density in the valley.
Wow.
And people were like, "What are you doing? You know, like it's going to be very expensive." And often the answer was, "Well, we're not here to produce grapes. We're here to make fine wine. You know, and you've got to take the decision right from the start." And I'd say it paid really much in a way that this high density now is, I would call it a bit the secret weapon to the estate to make this wine that had a lot of minerality, and it certainly is driving a new style within Marlborough. Which excites us, and that's the challenge the family wants to take.
No, it's really cool, and I just want to explain that a bit more to people who aren't familiar with high density planting. So, high density is where you're putting a lot more vines in the same space. So, I know Sauvignon Blanc is a very vigorous variety. It produces a lot of grapes. So, if you plant a lot of grapes in a small area, they compete more and they produce a smaller crop. Isn't that right? Something along those lines?
That's right. I've got an easy concept as well that probably people can relate to is comparing with a forest. And if you look at a natural forest, and certainly in New Zealand, we've got a lot of indigenous forest here. So you can actually see forests that have never been worked on. And you can see the behavior of a forest where, you know, natural forests are very, very dense, very close planting. And if you look at these forests, they're very resilient to climate change. You know, they've got deep root system, they help each other, and then they tend to be very resilient, and they really adapt to their terroir. Well, the concept of high density in vineyard is the same. The more plants you're going to put on the same land, the more they're going to tend to compete each other, need to go for a deeper root system because they can't just grow superficially. They need to go deep.
Right.
And as you get a deeper root system, like a tree in a forest, then you can find the minerals and the water deep in the soil. And then, you know, it can be dry, wet. You're a lot less resilient. The plant is a lot less resilient to the climate change. And all of this brings that notion of terroir, these roots of seeking deep in their terroir. And then you're not making what we call varietal wine that you'd see often in the Marlborough Sauvignon style. You know, it's just a big fruit bomb. in that case, what we're trying to do is you're making a terroir wine. It's not just about the fruit, but it's getting the minerality, that expression from the soil much deeper.
That makes total sense. And I know another interesting thing that you do that I want you to talk a bit about because I know it's unique is dry farming. So you don't irrigate your vineyards, which I think is pretty common there. So why did you decide to go with dry farming and not irrigating?
Well, that's an interesting one. It's actually a very tough one in terms of agronomy to try to not irrigate. We've got a few blocks that we completely succeeded that haven't been irrigated for 5 years now,
Wow.
which has been very successful. Some of them that we're trying to wean slowly toward no irrigation. It's a process. You can't just shut the thing straight away. The irrigation, I think, is quite dangerous, but it's just, I always say, we've got 220,000 vines on the estate. Is having 220,000 kids that you've got to educate.
Right.
You know, and educating a kid doesn't take a year or two. It takes sometime for some of them a lot longer than others even.
For sure.
But and it's the same. It's getting these vines to slowly understand they've got to look after each other. But all of that is working toward the idea of these vines needs to sustain themselves. And the least you bring to them in terms of all these outside components, the more they're going to bring a genuine story in your wine. They will reflect the land. So yes, from year to year, your wine may be a bit different. They would have changed from a vintage to vintage, but they tell a story. They've got a story. They're not just a beverage.
Right.
They transport a story from the land, and that's very important to us.
Well, for sure, and that really leads perfectly right into your philosophy of natural farming, organics, biodynamic, and you're certified as well. So it feels like that flows into dry farming, the unique terroir. But tell us about the importance of this, because I know it's also relatively unique in the region too to be biodynamic and organic.
That's right. Well, an interesting fact is actually, New Zealand is a fantastic country. I love it at heart. A lot of people love it at heart. It's very green or very dry, but it's very natural. But on the other side, it's interesting to note that sometimes farming is not always that natural. But I mean, it's not a blame to New Zealand. I think it's just the world in general that's struggling with the farming culture in the last 50, 60 years, or the way we run things. But when the bourgeois family told us, and there was actually one phone call one day where one of the family members told me, we're very privileged to have a piece of that land in New Zealand, and as farmers, they know the privilege they have, and I say, we have to look after it. He says, 10 generations we've been in business, and we have to go organic. We need to go organic. We need to look after that land. It's a no-brainer. And then the decision was taken. So we shifted organic, and there's no way back. Once you go the organic way, there's no way back. It's another way to think. It's more demanding in a positive way because you simply have to observe and listen a bit better to what the vineyard's telling you. But it's also allowed us to actually have wine that tends to have a more genuine expression of where they come from, And I've seen the shift. It's not a radical shift. It probably takes about 6 or 7 years for a vineyard to adapt and show that in the wines. But for me, it's like when you've got such a precious piece of land like what we've got here in Marlborough, you just simply want to make sure you get the best out of it and you look after it.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a wise decision, and really before the trend. 2000 was really before it became the trendy thing to do, to be organic and to be natural. And props on you and the bourgeois family for seeing that, and it's definitely the right move. So I think and those who tuned in late, the estate Clos Henri is just starting harvest today because it's the fall season for them. So I know you, and they're harvesting now. So it's 7 in the morning. So I know you harvest early in the morning a lot of times, a lot of the blocks. So what's the benefit of that? Why would you harvest first thing in the morning? It seems like a bit torturous. Oh, we're going outside. I like that.
I'll show you a bit of the sunrise in Marlborough.
Nice.
It's probably what you try. This is
Ah, beautiful.
This is rising with a bit of a pink sky, and um, there you go. Nice calm and still.
Perfect.
That's facing north. So this is the atmosphere of our first day of harvest.
Ah,
It's actually
beautiful.
quite special to be live for the first day of harvest with the US. I'm loving it.
Yeah, no rains.
So
That's good. Yeah, exactly. Beautiful morning.
that's right, exactly. Yeah. So you could see there's a bit of a bit of you know pink clouds and yeah. So the sun that you're sending us from LA is actually coming our way now.
It's a little
So,
delayed, but it gets there eventually.
isn't that fantastic? Yeah.
That's
So
beautiful.
yeah. So it's the first day of harvest. Yes, that's right.
So I know you do everything by, is everything done by hand? And tell us about picking in the morning and why that's beneficial.
Yeah, well, we do a bit by hand, quite a bit. The beauty we have, which seems to be obvious for everybody, but it's not the case on every estate. But our winery is in the heart of the estate. It's just about 300 meters behind me here. So the winery is completely central into the estate. So the key to it for us is that there's no transport for the grapes. It takes about a couple of minutes for the grapes to get to the winery.
Nice.
And that's hugely beneficial for the quality because as soon as you pick grapes, it's a very fragile fruit. And one of the key quality into wine is getting this grape quickly into the winery. So yes, we do quite a bit of hand harvest for the Pinot, a tiny bit for the Sauvignon as well, and we do sometimes a bit of machine pick for, but very early in the morning. But the beauty is that it gets to the winery within a couple of minutes and get very very quickly processed. So this is an absolute key for us to the quality. A lot of the fruit here can be traveling, for half an hour,
Hmm.
and sometimes in the big wineries, the food can wait and macerate. When here, the big decision for the family was like, food needs to be processed extremely quick to preserve the freshness of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to maintain that crisp acidity and bright freshness. So before we start speaking about the wines, I did want to speak a bit about some of your helpers out here. I know it's a very natural estate, so I believe you have your own sheep. What kind of animals do you have on the estate, and what's the benefit there?
Well, the sheep are certainly a huge benefit. I mean, sheep seems to be synonymous of New Zealand. People think about New Zealand, think about sheep, and
Yeah.
and and they're certainly a huge help over the winter. What's interesting here is over winter the grass keeps growing, so we've got very good frost, but we've got some very bright days, so we still have a bit of growth, and that's a way for us to keep to keep the grass down, helping farmers as well to keep their sheep happy as well. So yeah, we've got our part of our a flock of sheep, but we also get them over the winter. So we have an average of 480 sheep
Wow. That's a lot.
over the winter. And having the estate being only in one block, it's a clos, it's all enclosed. Makes it very practical for managing the different blocks and moving the sheep around. So we put them right after harvest, as soon as the fruit is picked, because sheep can be a bit naughty with fruit, so you have to be careful.
Oh, they'll eat the
Um,
fruit if you leave them out there.
they've got a sweet tooth just like us.
Ah, that's
You know,
that's interesting. Okay, that makes sense. You don't want to lose
so we
you
put,
don't want to lose 20% of your harvest. So
no, we try to avoid that. There's not the right purpose, but and then we get the sheep into the vineyard right after harvest, and then and try to take them out right before bud burst as well, because you don't want them to start eating the new shoots at spring. Anything green and tender, they love it. So,
nice.
but they do a fantastic job in the block. So it's a very natural way to get the grass under control. It's also a natural fertilization,
Right.
because obviously what they eat, they're rejected on the land as well. And you got to think that the digestive system of a sheep is exactly like a cow. So as they go, it goes through the digestive system. There's an amazing amount of inoculum being coated on that grass and rejected, and this is helping to also inoculate the land with beneficial bacteria that will help composting and the humus and so on. So that's that's all happening naturally. It seems to make sense, you know.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And like you said,
We have
and
we have cattle as well.
oh, cattle too.
Cattle
Okay, I think I
on
have
the
a picture
property.
here.
Yeah, we had 5 deers by accident the other day that we've discovered. We've got 14 hectares of forestry, and we are regenerating some native planting. You know, New Zealand is very big on native planting, and
Right.
unfortunately, in the last 100 years, a lot of the land was cleared, and then that's one objective of the estate is to bring a lot of biodiversity back in the estate. So we're planting about 700 trees a year on the
Right.
property to regenerate. And the other day we had a good surprise. As we were walking up, there was some deer on the land. So that was beautiful.
Ah, it's cool. You guys are doing the right thing. And you mentioned quickly, and I just wanted to reinforce it to the people listening, is that the name of the state, Clos Henri. Clos is actually comes after a French term for a walled vineyard. So it's an enclosed walled vineyard, and so it's named Clos Henri, but it actually is a walled estate, right?
Yeah, it's in the Kiwi term is fenced.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, the whole estate is completely enclosed, so it's definitely a clos for us. But I always laugh about it because I say the Kiwi way to actually enclose it compared to a French way is putting a sheep fence. You know,
Right.
that's what we do. So it's a Kiwi adaptation to the clos. But we're one of the very, very, very few properties that are completely enclosed and have a clear identity that's where our land is. So, just wanted to add a note on the biodiversity as well.
Yeah.
With the tree, I was talking about the animals, but the journey for us as well is to try to bring the wildlife. I was talking about the deer, which is fantastic to see a deer in the bush, but we're trying to bring a lot of the native birds back on the property, and that's a journey, and it will take a long time. It's a difficult path, but it's a path that we need to. It's a challenge that we need to take on. So regenerative natives as well. It's about bringing the bird life back. New Zealand was actually a country, a land that had no mammals before.
Oh, right.
Mammals were introduced, and the birds, it was just a sanctuary for birds, you know. And it's our journey to try to bring that back to the estate. So and we believe this biodiversity is absolutely key for the balance, the ecological balance of the estate. And because we are one farm completely enclosed, then we can afford to do that. We can recreate that ecosystem that is absolutely
Right.
key.
No, it's good on you guys. It's an amazing journey, and like you said, it's an enclosed estate, so you can create your own ecosystem, but also for your grapes too. So, we're going to get into speaking quickly about a few of the wines here before we let you go. But yeah, there we go. So, so you produced two Sauvignon Blancs. So tell me a bit about what's the difference between the two. We have both of them with Touton. So give us just a brief. What's the philosophy here?
Right. So the range is rather simple. The one on the left is a cuvée that we call the Petit Clos. So Petit stands for little in French, and the idea is to say it's a little one of the Clos Henri, and it's a selection from the younger vines of the estate. When the one on the right hand side is really the estate wine. It's a flagship wine on the right hand side, and carries the name of the estate simply. That was part of the journey of the last 20 years. When we established Clos Henri, we planted new vineyards. Progressively. I mean, we're still small. We only got 100 acres of vineyards, which is fairly tiny for the region. But it was important that because we don't buy any fruit and we certainly don't want to purchase any fruit, we want it to be only from our estate. We had to find ways to create our range according to what we have. And the idea of the Petit Clos was to make very good use of the young fruit that makes some very elegant and fresh wines.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw, we need to express that as well. So the Petit Clos Sauvignon is really about freshness, fruit, but also a nice touch of minerality. It's the introduction to Clos Henri, the Petit Clos. Right. It's a Marlborough fruit that we're used to know, but probably in a more subtle way. It's not overwhelming fruit expression that sometimes you get in some very, very commercial wines. but again with a touch of minerality, that finesse, a beautiful freshness. So the Petit Clos is really the everyday wine, is a pleasure wine.
Yeah.
And when you get to the Clos Henri on the right-hand side, the flagship, well, it's a more educated style. And certainly this is clearly the print of the bourgeois family in Marlborough. It's about minerality, it's about finesse, it's about depth, and it's about ageability to a degree. I mean, I know not everybody's, has a cellar to age wine and is not today's purpose, but you can forget about a bottle for 5 years and you're certainly going to have a good surprise. So this wine is to enjoy with a meal, with seafood, but also with, like a nicely baked fish, or even some chicken, like some white meat. But it has beautiful density. And sometimes people are telling us, oh, it looks a bit like a Sancerre. And then the family always often say, we don't want it to be a Sancerre because we have Sancerre already. But it is clear that the Clos Henri on the right-hand side, he's a Sancerre print on the Marlborough terroir.
Yeah.
And I think that's there's a lot to say about this one, because I know locally a lot of people are saying, could it be the next wave of Marlborough? What is going to be what is going to be Marlborough in the future? And for us, it's not about creating just a big fruit bomb.
Yeah.
What we call a varietal expression. It's about creating a wine that's got finesse and restraint, and they can be enjoyed. Like they can match very well beautiful, seafood and so on. So it's a very different wine, and a lot of my colleagues winemaker here say this kind of wine can only be made by you guys because you can see the sunset print on it.
Well, they're both beautiful expressions, and like you said, the Petit Clos I love because it's it's a great everyday wine, great by the glass at a restaurant. But then the Clos Henri, the flagship, is just the depth and layers of complexity, and like you said, the ability to age. People don't think of Sauvignon Blanc is an ageable wine, but this absolutely certainly is. And after 3-4 years in bottle, it's spectacular. And I wanted to mention that it's not necessarily a requirement, but it certainly helps, and it's nice to have. Your wines are incredibly well rated, and both of these wines that we're carrying currently have 94 or 94 plus ratings. So it's nice when other people agree that you're doing good things. So it's both of these wines are spectacular, and both in their own way, which is what I like about them.
Yeah, no, it's this rating are certainly for us a validation of what we've been trying to achieve for the last 20 years. It's still a long journey. But we're living in a region where it's dominated by a lot of big players, that are selling wine into supermarket at very well priced, good wines, nothing wrong with it. But it's for a different purpose. These wines are a beverage. You get a nice fruity Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc they enjoy on the deck, and that's it. But for us, we believe that Marlborough has a lot more than that. And though we are small, we want to keep on that same track and prove that that land can deserve the recognition of making fine wine, and I'm very confident for the future, because I think there is a place for the more commercial wine, but there's also a place for the very delicate terroir driven wine. So I think the future is pretty bright. We just got to keep working hard.
Absolutely. No, you guys are doing the right thing. And speaking of that, let's move into the Pinot Noirs, which are, I know, also definitely a passion project. So, obviously same philosophy here, Petit Clos and then the Clos Henri. But tell us, Pinot Noir from New Zealand, how does it differ from Burgundy? How does it differ from, Oregon, as an example?
Well, Pinot Noir from New Zealand is gradually making its print worldwide. I think New Zealand is not the new world like the normal new world. It's another new world. And certainly because of its freshness and its terroir, it's got the ability to not make this big new world Pinot, but making these very elegant, fresh, fine Pinot Noir. And that's, for me, that's the print. And people are very surprised when they often put their hand on the bottle of Pinot Noir. So again, you got to select the producers, but you know what it is with Pinot. You have to make sure you select your producers because it's quite a delicate variety to produce, and it's not always right. But in the case of Marlborough, particularly, we tend to have a terroir that makes wine that are very on the delicate side. They don't tend to be on the richness. Probably that's more the style of Central Otago, further south, where the wines are a bit more bold. When here, the wines are very delicate, fresh. I've often been traveling overseas and even in Asia, where our Clos Henri Pinot was compared with the Chambol Musigny, certainly for its finesse, you know. So yeah, it's about freshness. We have a reputation for making wine that've got a beautiful spiciness as well, you know, mixed with a nice fruit, and a bit of an earthiness as well. So especially the one on the right-hand side, the estate wine, it tends to have that burgundy kind of feel to it. We haven't done it on purpose, but it seems to be what comes out of it. So for the bourgeois family, the new Sauvignon Blanc would be a success. But what's happening with Pinot Noir here excites them a lot. They are always very proud of showing that to their friend growers in France and showing what they can do in New Zealand. And they've been steering a few people with their Pinot Noir in France. But it's amazing. The potential is absolutely huge to make this delicate wine. So quickly on the left-hand side, the Petit Clos, same idea as in the Sauvignon Blanc, is a little one of the range. And then this is aged in very large wooden vats. And so the idea is that we not too much oak influence, you know, already stay on the fruity side. It's just a delicious wine. These are the vats. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
So these are the big vats. And yeah, this is a wine that you want to grab at the end of the day. And while you're cooking, you're just enjoying a glass. And sometimes you may have to open the second bottles by the time dinner is cooked. It's an amazing value for money. I think we're probably selling it too cheap.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the Clos Henri Pinot is a more educated version of the Petit Clos. I think at the moment we are about to get on 2017 vintage, probably in about 3 or 4 months, and then. Again, this vintage is extremely delicate. The wine enthusiasts gave us 95 points for it, so we're pretty excited about it.
Yep.
Because we believe that.
Actually, to cut you off, the 2017 is arriving next week for us, so we're very excited to get the 2017 in. Yeah.
Good timing.
Yeah.
Good timing. Yeah. Now, so watch the space for New Zealand Pinot. I think the future is very, very bright. The terroir is extremely suited to Pinot for its freshness and making delicate expression of Pinot. So yeah, watch the space. I think there's gonna get better and better and better, and there's certainly some serious style. And we hope that you can sample some of the Clos Henri and make your mind on it.
No, for sure. The wines are spectacular, and vintage to vintage, they're very consistent, but also very unique, and that's what I appreciate is that there's that consistency, but also that unique characteristic every single vintage. It's always exciting when we have new vintages coming in, like we do, the 17 coming in. I think we have a lot of new vintages coming in, and all equally highly rated as well. So it's always an exciting time of year for us in our spring to be receiving your new vintages. So, but Damien, it's about that time, unfortunately. Time for you to head back to harvest and for us to continue on with our day. But I just want to thank you again for the time. Spectacular wines. Thank you for sharing the story. It's great for us to hear directly from you and to be at the estate and just learn firsthand what makes the wine so unique and really special.
Well, thank you, David. Sad to leave you guys because I'm actually, as much as we hate these last 12 months, I've actually been enjoying connecting with the likes of you guys because it's amazing. Actually, we can do some amazing things like that, and it's a great way to share our stories, and explain what we're doing. We're certainly not the most conventional winery in New Zealand, but what I encourage everybody to do as consumers of trade is look at New Zealand with the smaller producers. and you're going to discover some amazing style. I think there's some real big treasures here. And New Zealand wines is not one trick pony. You know,
Yeah.
you have the likes of the big guys that about 5 or 6 brands that are very well known. But if you scrape the surface, there's a lot of wine with a lot of fun behind. So I hope you got the message, and I hope you will get the chance to taste our wines. And I'd say my closing message was like, I hope the borders will reopen, because you guys may want to get out, but me, I want to get out as well and come to the US, because I absolutely love coming to the US. You have a fantastic country, and yeah, can't wait so we can see each other soon again
Well,
in
that makes
person.
2 of us. Thank you again, and we'll sign off for now. But Damien, everyone at Clos Henri, thank you for everything, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Cheers, you too. Bye, everyone. We'll see you. Actually, before I sign off, we'll be back. 2 weeks from now. We're doing every other week. So our next conversation will be Thursday, March 25th, with Philippe Blanc. He's the managing director of Chateau Bechevel. So we'll be going to Bordeaux for a historic estate within Bordeaux. So we'll see you March 25th, 2 weeks from now. Damien, thank you again. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see everyone again soon.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers, you too. Bye.
Thank you.